And my guest today is Bob Chapman, the international forecaster. Hello, Bob. How are you?
Well, I'm pretty good today. Pretty good.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it's nice to have somebody on my show that's older than I am.
Well, I'll have to admit to that. I don't have any, trouble doing that.
But with age comes experience, and you're certainly experienced in the international community. You are the international forecaster. Been doing that for some time. Sorry that our government ran you out of this country. I'd like to be able to have a cup of coffee with you.
Well, that's true, but one of the things about traveling from country to country to avoid the clutches of the New World Order is that it really opens your life view, which it has for me for many years throughout my life, because I've lived and traveled extensively. And it gives you a much different perspective on what's going on than you would get if you were sitting, say, in Chicago. And there's some great advantages to it. And so I'm able to bring things forward that other people don't see.
Now, you mentioned the New World Order. I've made the comment often that they don't call it the New World Order for nothing, because I've talked to a lot of people that were going to move to Guatemala. They were going to go down to some other country, Venezuela. I think somebody went one time, and they didn't seem to be any better off. The New World Order. They've infiltrated all of these governments in almost all of these countries, haven't they?
I think to a great extent you're correct, although it depends upon where you go. If you have a large population, you sort of get lost. If you go to big cities like Rio de Janeiro or Buenos Aires, you can get lost pretty easy. As far as smaller countries like Panama and Costa Rica, well, you're pretty easy to spot. I mean, everybody knows what a gringo looks like. And but then again, there's Mexico City, and the rules of most of the countries are pretty easy. You just get a visa that you renew every year, and after 5 years, if you choose to, you can become a citizen of that country, usually. But I think one of the problems with many of the countries and cities is there's not an awful lot to do. It depends upon one's personality. But what the U.S. government has done, and it's going to get more onerous, is now if today you went, say, to Rio de Janeiro and you bought some property, they report that to the U.S. government, to the IRS. That's a law, agreement, not a law, it's an agreement. On the other hand, they have legislation, agreement, I should say, a year and a half from now, approximately beginning of 2013, the Internal Revenue Services of all the different countries have to report how much money you have in your bank accounts, and they have to remove 1/3 of it and give it to the IRS in case you owe taxes. Now, if that isn't a totalitarian state, I don't know what is.
Let me ask you.
So, if you're carrying an American passport, you're screwed.
I can't even afford to go get an American passport. They wanted about $300 to give me a passport, or to renew a passport.
Well, I don't know what it is because I don't go anywhere anymore.
Yeah.
So I never look. But the point is this. A lot of people want to get out of the clutches of that. And maybe they're not any better off in Panama City or San Jose or Santiago or Mexico City. But they have put themselves one step away from what was there before and what is coming in the future. And that's what they want to do. And a lot of them are fed up with living in the United States as well. You know, you're driving down the highway and you get pulled over and they give you a ticket for speeding and you're not speeding. And the cop says, well, look, you know, I got a quota and I got to fill it and you get picked for today. And you go complain to the judge and the judge says, I don't know what you're talking about. Guilty is charged, pay the fine. Of course, your insurance doubles.
Right.
And that's the game that they play, and a lot of people want to get away from that. I mean, right now I live in a city, and there's a large population, but not super large. And the only time I ever see a police person is in a restaurant picking up lunch or dinner or something, and they don't care. They're after crime, and they're very good at it, actually, in most countries. And but there's no harassment, if you get what I mean.
Yes, I get what you mean.
And so people want to get away from that. And if you really did break the law, and you were speeding, and the law officer pulls you over, and he says to you in Spanish, you know, you're going a little too fast. And you look at him, and you hand him your license, and $10. And he sort of quickly makes the $10 disappear in local currency, and hands you the license back and says, please, in the future, drive more carefully and stay under the speed limit. And he goes away. Now, why does he do that? Because he's only paid about $600 a month. And that's not a lot of money. So he's got to pick up a few $100s each month from people who are breaking the law.
Well, it seems to me to be a better system and more fair than paying for the judges, paying for the police officers, you know, and paying $200 or $300 in fines. Let me ask you.
Right.
Let me touch on a few of the hot spots and hot topics here, because I've really been looking forward to your opinion on it. One, Libya. What the hell are we doing?
Stop right there. Let's stop.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Gaddafi was put in power by the British. His son is very connected in Europe. The family has a great deal of money, which he's stolen from the people. The estimates are about $30 billion. And these relationships that I'm going to tell you about developed in the last 15 years, I would say, maybe 20. And most of it comes through his son. And through his son, he's been able to get Tony Blair as an advisor, and also a former cabinet member, Mr. Mendelsohn, who is also known as the Flamer, because he is a very overt homosexual. And over in France, his son is he are very close to Mr. Sarkozy, who was the president of France. And some of his investments, the senior, Mr. Gaddafi, are handled by the Rothschilds. Now, you can see this evolutionary process. And so he's got himself pretty connected in Europe. Now, why do they want him out of there? Well, they want chaos all over the region because they don't want anybody helping Iran, whether it's just moral support or physical support, when they get ready to go and invade it with Israel. And the state bank in Libya is owned by the government. And they also own corporations which operate worldwide. And they also hold 143.8 tons of gold. Now, you know all about their oil, which is some of the best oil in the world.
All right, one other thing, and I want your comment on the underground river that Gaddafi has built there, and to make the Libya a little bit more self-sufficient for food. I mean, they're pumping these the water out of these aquifers there that are supposed to be really good.
Well, that was my last item. But anyway, you know all about the oil. It takes 3 Saudi barrels to make 1 barrel of Libyan oil. And then there's 4 major aquifers under the country, and they're doing what you're saying. And they're withdrawing the water, and they're greening the desert like the Israelis did. And they're growing things. And that it was their mission to be able to become self-sufficient in food. Now, the rebels. The rebels have been directed by the Central Intelligence Agency. They have been armed by them. U.S. Special Forces have been on the ground for about 3 months prior to this, quote, revolution. And the man that's running the CIA operation in the rebels, a former officer in Gaddafi's army, has spent the last 20 years living in Virginia, and he's an employee of the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, you put it all together, Gaddafi knows what he's up against. What he's looking for is a deal. And the United States has just spent gobs of money blowing everything up in sight. And these poor souls who are on both sides killing each other, they don't know what the game is all about. And the U.S. just simply wants him out of there like they wanted Mubarak out, but they didn't want the U.S. and Israel to attack her. He stole $70 billion, and now they're going to steal it. Stepped out of line. He didn't do what he was told. Let's operate. So, it will probably drag on for months, and they want action because of things going on in the municipalities and the pension funds, hundreds of bankruptcies of municipalities. You have the Federal Reserve funding the U.S. government, create out of air each day. And Ellen that's told the EU, look, either do it our way, which means the bondholders are going to have to take the loss. The Alpha Group, black nobility of Europe and the Rothschilds. And then we have the other 5, which they don't know whether, I think they'd rather go bankrupt, which is really the best thing for them. Said months ago that the ticker will, well, they realize that. today.
Now, Bob,
at the G20.
they're spraying the whole countryside over there on the supposedly under the no-fly zone with depleted uranium. I mean, aren't they doing the same thing to Libya that they've done to Iraq?
That's right. And the weapons are British. The U.S. isn't using those uranium-loaded weapons. British are. Or the British have supplied them, one or the other. Stuff this morning. Getting back, the problems that are being covered up, action that the Middle East and so Mrs. Merkel at the G20 meeting, which the group had already allocated $1 trillion, of course Germany pays more than another $1 trillion. And Germany knows another and so does everybody else. They're all trying to buy to be better. Why?
Go ahead.
The reason why is, which is the ruling party of this part of, got the crap kicked out of it, constituency. And I think she got the message, if she doesn't do what the people wanted to do, that her party and she are not going to be in office. But the kibosh on the extra $1 trillion, that first $1 trillion backed by $300 billion, and the bureaucrats and the one world as G20 meeting went into, they were crazy. Act to add to this, which is very Germany Council, UN Security Council. There were 3 abstentions: China, fly zone, and Germany. It's the first. The Germany says, no, we ain't going to do that. The major break from the U.S. England. Think about it. In the euro, they don't want to bail those people out. Bunch of people that don't want to work. Freeloaders. European Union, they want to do their own thing. They found a guy in the block was worthless. All it did was cost them money to make. And now that trade is slow, they really having second thoughts. And remember, this was to make a cover for all of what I just told you. And what the New World Order is doing, at least, or maybe in Japan, an untoward black swan nobody expected, that I know of, and the distractions there. How long will they have accomplished what they wanted to do? Although they may get some unattended
consequences.
Yemen, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the UAE, whether they can be seen. And maybe even Iran may even rake an attack on Israel.
Now, let me stop you right there. Let me ask you a couple of things. Hang on a second here. I've got. I don't know what. That was a strange noise there. You still with me, Bob?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Let me ask you the reasoning here. Why? I mean, we've even had Sarah Palin and the Tea Parties over here talking about bombing Iran. Why? What is why the fear of Iran? And two, what is the Israeli connection? We haven't really discussed this before on our shows, but I do a lot of stories on the Federal Reserve, on the movie business, on the pharmaceutical businesses, and the treatment of the Palestinians by the Jews, by the Israelis. What is the Iran and Israel? What's the connections there? Where's all this war coming from? I mean, is this from the banksters funding both sides? Are the banksters Jewish? And why the hatred of Iran? Go ahead.
Well, I think vacation of the Muslim world, and the moderate Muslim world at that, moderate in the sense is that they're not like, let's say, Saudi Arabia. The main reason Israel is an integral part of it that way over 100 years ago. Back, the history goes of the Mensheviks, the taking of Russia, the work of the people, and then the migration, for the most part, from Europe to Israel during the, and I might add, and I've said this on the show before, also were infiltrated in many of them by the German government. It is an expansionist. They want to take over the entire Middle East up to.
Greater Israel?
It's as simple as that.
Greater Israel is what they call it, right?
You would call it Liebestrom, which is a good German word, and that sort of thing. And from my, and I have many close Jewish friends, that's happened between Israel and in Israel. And I would say, I know, and have talked about these, they don't agree, and they don't like what Israel's home state, so to speak, but they don't like, and I have one of them say to me, baggage. I don't want any part of it, but those are not good people. I mean, the salesman. You gotta be kidding me. And he's a CIA asset, of course. But the idea is the expansionist in the Middle East. That's what it's about. Taking over natural resources and controlling and treating them badly, which they, because they're racist. And so that's the impetus there, the main impetus. They'll continue to do that as long as they're allowed to.
Now, Bob, I've made a comment offhand that I think maybe we've been in Armageddon for the last 100 years because so many people have died in wars and pestilence and all that over the last 100 years. The Georgia Guidestones were erected and I'm sure you're familiar with them. They've got it written in stone down in Georgia that they want to reduce the world's population to a manageable 500 million. That means you got to kill a few billion people. And we've been doing that, and the United States has been doing that over in Iraq, in Afghanistan. A lot of wealth in Afghanistan, and, those nasty old Taliban were destroying the opium poppy crops. So our troops are now guarding those. And then
$350 billion a year in income.
And they've also discovered that those
all goes to...
Goes where? Goes where?
CIA.
The CIA is...
The profits.
The CIA, in my book, Mystery Babylon, the CIA was responsible, along with Mossad, for setting up a pipeline running from Colombia to Panama, and from there up to a little airport in Arkansas called Mena. They flew in over 100 plane loads of cocaine into Albrook Air Force Base under Noriega. And then it went up to the protected airport by Clinton. So I believe that most of the drugs are being run by the CIA and Mossad, and I don't think there's any difference in the two agencies, except for deniability.
Well, you're right about that, and you got to. When you have money, it has to be invested. And the only way you can do that is through banks. So, the drug trade cannot exist without banks. All the banks who are handling the drug money know they are. Expedite that by taking 2 or 3% here and there. And so they're very integral. I mean, in a net basis, if you're taking from the drug money that's coming in, which is $1 trillion, that's a lot of money. The banking community worldwide, because the money comes to them.
That's right. Now, under this plan, now if you're going to kill a bunch of people, well, they're doing a pretty good job in Iraq because the children that are being born deformed from all this radiation that's in the air and the dust. Now we've got Japan, and I got a feeling that there's a hell of a lot more happening in Japan than just an accident and a tidal wave. Your take on it, sir?
Well, I think you're right, and people in the future, probably 10 years down the line, will die like the police and firemen who weren't protect the 9/11 events, and have been for several years. In fact, warning that the police in New York have taken possession of the body who died as a result of being in buildings, and about it, and they can't do anything about it. Autopsies were not allowed topically. They were able to tell that the man of his exposure while he was on duty at 9/11. So, it's good. Not enough people are assist them in that, but they don't want to be blamed for it, so they want to cover it up.
Okay, now hold on just a second here. Hold on just a moment here. Let me